Hello, good evening. So today we have Asela Waidyalankara. So me and Asela go a long way. We know each other for a long time. So I was very curious because he initially started his career from a business administration stream, and then he changed his path to cybersecurity, and he has become a advocate of that area, and he has done so many knowledge sharing sessions in Sri Lanka and overseas as well. So Asila, without me introducing, if you can give me everyone a brief introduction about yourself.
Difficult to say, but yes, I agree. I'm not a person who took a very straight line path, so I have taken a zigzag path. So I have started with bioscience, then did business administration with IT, then joined as a BA. To the surprise of most people who I shared the degree with, then I did my LLB and LLM, and then to the surprise of most people, I have chosen in their mind a very technical subject. In my mind, it's not. And now I advocate on matters of cybersecurity, and I take a very different look at cybersecurity. So that's the only way I can describe it.
That's really great. So many knowledge from different area. So we can talk about them in a different way. But today, let's come to the topic.
Sure.
So on cybersecurity, what's your take on cybersecurity? Because it's a hot topic these days, and everybody's talking about it. And we can see that due to it has become really important considering what has happened all around the world. So can you just give a brief idea about what your take on cybersecurity and what is the objective someone should is planning to achieve from gaining some knowledge and implementing any cybersecurity mechanisms in the organization or to in their I mean, uh, scope of work.
So I will. You asked a good question. When you talk about cybersecurity, when I started, now it's almost 10 years ago when I started advocating about this, talking about this. So I see now, like you correctly said, it has become a hot topic. Why? Because the circumstances have changed, but way back 2014 or even a little earlier than that, the conversation was very different when it comes to cybersecurity. Cybersecurity was viewed as a technical problem that required technical solutions. So then, because of that, the importance of the subject was not really given, I would say. And because of that, I think a lot of incidents happen in terms of data security and cyber attacks, where people finally realize at a certain point that only a technical solution cannot achieve the type of cybersecurity that we are going to achieve. Then another incident sort of changed people's outlook was in 2020, all of us had to be in lockdown and most of us had to be in remote work kind of situation. And because of that, then also people realize that you have to rely on digital platforms, digital infrastructure to get work done, to do business. Then finally they realized, okay, to secure these platforms, to ensure the security of the individual and the organization, and another level I talk about is the country, but we won't talk about that here. That is a very important aspect. So the conversation then shifted to everyone looking at the IT team for a solution, to going to a CXO, and now the conversation is at a board level. So when it comes to cybersecurity, I would say the conversation has evolved. the focus has evolved. And that's why now it's, like you correctly said, it's spoken about and become a hot topic. It's become a hot topic not because the problem has gone away. It's become a hot topic because now the level of escalation has gone higher. And because of that, the conversation is there. So I think that's the best way to look at it in terms of cybersecurity, because the rest is a long answer. So I thought I'll just give you a very short one in terms of what is cybersecurity and what is happening now.
Yeah. Thank you, Asela, for that. So, while it's becoming a hot topic, the trends are evolving, right? So, what sort of trends related to cybersecurity have you seen at the moment, and what are you seeing? Foreseeing in the future, in the next 10 to 15 years?
So the
What in
trend,
that age?
like I said, Chamindra, is one thing is what we call evolving threats. So no
Okay.
longer, because why the threat evolves is because people have also evolved. Because now the way they work is different. You are no longer behind an enterprise firewall because you are expected to be remote work. You are expected to work from home sometimes. You are expected. Some people are doing hybrid work. So then the threat also has evolved. And of course, you have to open up certain practices. For example, now we entertain BYOD, bring your own device, to an organization. We are encouraging hot desking in an organization. There's no longer a set cubicle or something. So with those evolutions, the threat also evolves. And we see that, especially in terms of when people started remote working, there was a lot of threats there, because the same machine or same device that they were using for their work, they had to use for other things, especially in the lockdown period. You had to order your groceries from the same device as you had to run your meetings. And then if you had a kid, the kid needed to probably use your device to attend school. So multiple functions in one device. So then the threat also is evolving in that situation. So then when the threat evolves, we had to also look at how in different ways to deal with it. So one thing that came out of that era is ransomware. Ransomware was growing, but what happened? But it really took a life of its own in after COVID, and now it continues to grow. Cyber crime continues to grow, and cyber crime, the statistics that we have at the moment, is about 10 trillion US dollars. So it's not million, it's not billion, it's trillion US dollars.
Trillion. Okay.
Just to give you some context, entire Sri Lanka's debt portfolio is about 50 billion US dollars. So the 10 trillion is what they're assuming is in 2025, the projection. It's a little about 6 to 8 trillion dollars this year, but they're saying 10 trillion by next year. So that's the scale of cybercrime, and it becomes every organization, every company, every asset, every organization that has data as an asset is now a target. That could be individual, that could be organization, that could be a country. So that's how the threats have really evolved. Of course, with the last 18 months or so, there's one more thing, since you asked about the future, that has evolved, that is the artificial intelligence. So it's nothing new. Artificial intelligence, the discussion about this is very old. It's been around since 1960s.
It was there when we were
Yes.
studying at university as well, no? Yeah.
But
with virtual reality and everything.
Correct. I mean, everything we're talking about, the metaverse and all of that, these are technologies that were always there. But now what has happened is, given the high-speed connectivity, given the infrastructure, those technologies now on steroids. So if you look at artificial intelligence, it has really taken off in the last 18 months, what we call consumer AI, meaning the consumer has access to AI. AI was always there. You watch a YouTube video, the next video, AI was the one deciding in the background what does the video. But today what has happened is, you have very high tools like ChatGPT in everyone's hand. Even if you can access it for free, some people you can access the paid version for a little bit more. The point is, the tools have got democratized, so therefore, because of that, everyone has that tool. The good guys have the tool, the bad guys have that tool. So for example, I'll give you one: the phishing. Those days we used to say in a phishing email, look for grammatical errors, look for spelling mistakes, because that's something you know how to identify a phishing email. Now we don't say that any longer because of ChatGPT. The volume of the emails have got high, the quality of the emails have also got high. So we really don't know, and the interactivity, the personalization of the emails also is quite high. So these are I give you just one example. So many other examples of scammers using ChatGPT skins so that they can use it. Phishing emails getting better. So AI is going to, just like it's revolutionizing other sectors, it will revolutionize cybercrime also. And one more thing is regulations. So this is something we are not used to as tech people. Thirdly, there is regulation in our space. So that's maybe coming to data privacy, cybersecurity. If you have a breach, those days, if you had a breach, you don't need to tell anyone. You're just going to firefight and fix it yourself. Now you have to inform authority, like in other countries. Now, of course, in Sri Lanka also, we have similar laws. It's going to get activated by next year. So the regulation, that means governments, a regulator coming in is also there. So those are the three key changes I can see. One is the evolving threats. One is the second is the impact by AI. And third is regulation. Those are the three areas I see in terms of the trends.
Yeah. So again, great. Thank you, Asel, for that. So considering those three aspects, let's say now uh, we are implementing new IT systems and applications, right? And we have IBAs and all the developers and all the system architects, all these people. Considering the trends and everything, what are the things they should consider when implementing a new system? For example, a BA will gather the requirements for a system, for a new application, let's say a banking application. So he should definitely consider cybersecurity as a security requirement. So, and we have always considered security requirements as a non-functional requirement. Right?
NFR.
So, the current trend, shouldn't it be considered as a functional requirement in the future? What are your thoughts on the word?
A good question. That's a good question. So standard BA practice, because I was also BA, as you know, the standard BA body of knowledge defines non-functional requirements as standards, compliances, performance of a system. All that falls under NFR. But the point is, if you take a fintech application, if you take a banking application, and there is a functional requirement, let's say, but within that functional requirement, maybe the prioritization also for security should be there. So now I would consider it a hybrid approach. For example, let's say authentication. So when there's authentication mechanism for something, that has a very high importance, like you very correctly said, if it's a banking or a fintech application. So then the cybersecurity prioritization there is higher than a non-functional requirement. So now we have to evolve from there and look at a hybrid approach. So even as a business analyst, because business analyst is a very important function, it demystifies the business function to the IT teams, sort of demystifies the IT to the business. So they are the key So there you must always try to understand. Maybe the business user can't articulate it in a way that the technical teams can understand, but they must understand the importance of cybersecurity, especially in the applications. They might say it's a functional requirement. However, as the business analyst, you must understand within that functional requirement, there are cybersecurity risks that can harm not only the application, not only the system, but also the business even. Because if there is an incident, the first hit comes to the business, not to the IT team. Business will lose revenue, business will lose reputation, business will lose trust with the customer. So the business will have the impact. Now we have to make them understand this is why cybersecurity is important to you. So maybe that authentication piece needs to have these controls. Now traditionally that should be a NFR, no longer. Now I would say those are key functional requirements within an organization and within a system. Also, don't forget like I said, the compliances also have changed. Standards have become more rigorous. There are regulations also that have become more rigorous. So I'll go back to the example you said. If it's a banking application, now they may not say, let's say, audit or logging features, but it should be there as a BA. That understanding should come from you. That will not come from maybe the development team. That will not come from the business team. That input has to be given to you. And my question to all my fellow colleagues is that an NFR now? It's not, because now it's a mission critical function. If you are not aligned to the regulations of the country, then that business will have a risk when you put something out. So then it's now becomes a functional requirement. So that's the way I look at it now. I think we should look at it as a functional requirement, or at least a hybrid way. And also, Chamindra, don't forget, cybersecurity is no longer, like I told you previously, it's no longer system or IT issue. It's an organization-wide issue. So we have the responsibility also to make business understand how important cybersecurity is in terms of the overall system reliability and so on and so forth. So that responsibility also, unfortunately, maybe falls on a BA, because no one else will be able to articulate that other than a BA, in my opinion.
Okay. So that is really clear. Thank you, Asel, for that. The other part I wanted to ask you was, considering the we have the agile teams who is working now for requirements and everything. Should we get someone like an ethical hacker into the team to do some testing, related to any cybersecurity issues, see the vulnerabilities, identify them, and report it to the team, just to identify the and report to the team before it is launched. That role might get automatically created in the future. That's what I feel. What are your thoughts on this?
On a short, obviously now teams have moved to Scrum. So on a short term and a medium term, that will be effective, because of course the moment you have a ethical hacker, they can do the vulnerability assessment, they can do a penetration testing, they can they can discuss the vulnerabilities, they can bring some best practices into it, they can create awareness, they can maybe advocate the culture, they can do all that. But in my opinion, because we have, in the long run, I don't know how effective that will be, simply because it will go back to the situation where it's one person's responsibility. Again, so when you have an ethical hacker, if you take a sprint environment, everyone's driven by achieving the milestones for the sprint, and there might be one person who is now advocating, okay, let's do this, let's do that. So let's say this ethical hacker individual identifies certain, maybe does a vulnerability assessment, identifies certain gaps. Where will they be fixed? This is my question, because now you're going for a sprint. Let's say the sprint is done in another 3 days. Are you going to move it to the next sprint, the fixers, or are they going to get sidelined? That's number one. Number two, the bargaining power of that individual within the team. That's another question. Thirdly, then security becomes one person's responsibility. Because everyone will say, okay, Mr. X should be the one doing it, not me. And therefore, again, we are going back to the traditional model where it's only one person's responsibility, no one takes ownership of it. And therefore, the delivery may become delayed. Again, again, it's then you look at the delivery versus the risk. You will have to do a trade-off. Plus, there's unnecessary pressure on that person. They may miss something, and then the responsibility will fall on one individual, which is not fair. So we have a different. I mean, in our world, we have a different view. It's either secure by design or zero trust. Those are the two models that we talk about. So secure by design, the idea is it's cheaper for a developer to have certain best practices, do even at a unit testing level, make sure that they are doing the code right. So that may be they're taking an additional day or two to, let's say they have 5 days effort, you're taking the 6th day just to make sure basic things in their code. Now we see when you look at the security incidents, it's because there is a flaw in the code most of the time. And the flaw in the code goes back to not in a bad way, but the developer maybe not having the awareness or the focus to make sure that you've taken that extra effort to make sure that code is secure or hardened by design. Now, what happens is you leave that vulnerability there, then it goes through testing, it goes through UA, it goes through all that, and now it's launched. Then it's out exposed to the customer. Then the bad guys are always trying. They are always poking a system. They are always looking at. They are also doing things. So then, when there's a vulnerability, it's very easy for them to exploit that. And then of course, company will have an issue. There will be a security incident. Maybe again, I'm going back to there. Maybe a brand issue for the company. But if you roll back the clock, if the developer took another extra day, or they have the visibility or the training or the awareness to make sure when they are doing the development, to ensure these best practices are there. We call it SDLC, Secure Development Lifecycle. So the code from the start, and not only development, that's why I said it starts in the BA team. At the point of requirement gathering, you're making sure you're setting these expectations
right. Correct.
And you are saying, for example, there shouldn't be anything in the code that might create a vulnerability. So these are just basic statements, but can go a long way. And actually, in the long run, save company money also. So, bit of a long answer, but end of the day, it should be the team's responsibility. Everyone should play a role. If you segregate that to one person, that's no different than right now you asking the cybersecurity team to, before pre-launch, to check it. There's no different having an ethical hacker in the team, because you are just piling the work on that guy. And don't forget,
you're not taking the responsibility.
You're not taking the responsibility. So cybersecurity, this is what we tell people. Why we go to the board, I advise boards, I advise CXOs. So we go and tell them, now you have to take responsibility also. So in that scenario, I think especially it's important for IT teams, everyone else also to say, listen, everyone is going to take that responsibility. Not an individual person. But that's in the long run. In the short term, there is a good effect, because certain best practices and that thinking will come into the team.
Okay. Great. Thank you, Asela. The other one I wanted to ask you was, we talked about these trends and everything. Now we are having the online act that was passed recently. And so many concerns are there. People have expressed their concerns. It has taken off my current security as well. I mean, my current online presence will also get affected by this, they are saying. What are your personal thoughts and how will it impact businesses in the future once it gets implemented? One point. And then how will it change the cybersecurity landscape in Sri Lanka for the businesses? What are your thoughts on that?
So before I answer both of those questions, one is it was a law that was badly made. Let's be very clear on that. It was
Incompetent past decision, you're saying?
no, but okay. I always take this example because I was
Yeah.
involved in the process.
Yeah.
Now, the Personal Data Protection Act started in 2019. The consultation process. I was involved in the consultation. There were 8 rounds of industry consultation. More than 50 representations people wrote and gave their suggestions. So including Meta, including all these companies that are having their concerns now, those same companies came forward and made their representations. They said
Yeah.
this is how it should change. And that process from 2019, 2020, 2021 and 2022. So it took 3.5 years. So if you see, I think only in the March 2022 only the act passed in Parliament. That's how you, especially when it comes to technology laws, that's the process you follow. Because at any point, a government can't give a holistic picture. They must always consult the stakeholders and get a good
Correct. Correct.
idea
That was I was thought. You
how
can't
to
make
do
the
this.
you
Yeah,
can't make this sole decision.
you can't. I mean,
Yeah.
as a BA, it's very easy for us. Can we
Yeah.
can we make a SRS on our own? We just read some about the client. We don't meet the client. We read about it. We understand a few things, and we make an SRS.
Yeah.
And we give it to the development team. Can we do that? Is that correct?
Yeah.
That's not. So that same process for lawmaking, you have to have a wide consultation, and as a BA how long that process takes. And end of the day, you maybe not only one iteration. There might be several iterations until you get a good, acceptable product. It might not be the great one, but mostly acceptable. So the same thing needs to happen here. So it didn't. That's my thing, because they, I think, came in August. I have it somewhere here, but they released it in August and or September, the draft, and by January it's passed in Parliament.
Yeah.
So then, I mean, you don't need to take global examples. This is in Sri Lanka. One act passed very differently. Industry consultation, several rounds of consultation. There were good things, bad things. We debated. We took the bad part out. And finally, the law that came, acceptable to everyone. No one challenged it or no one made a fuss. Because and dialogue and all the parties were part of that consultation. Now you have something like this. The telcos were not consulted. Now I have spoken to Meta and all those guys. They were also not consulted. Then there's impact on digital marketing guys. They were also not consulted. Users were not consulted. Then civil society, those guys were also not consulted adequately. I'm not saying. So when it's out, we will also try to give our ideas, but there has to be a long, the requirement gathering phase needs to be longer. That's my concern. So because of that, there's an impact. So even now you see, it was challenged by one of the highest challenged bills in Supreme Court. Ultimately, there was 45 or 49 petitioners challenging it. Then even when Parliament has passed it, now they're trying to bring amendments to it. They're saying we'll bring even more amendments. So that tells you, when you launch a product, you can't do a requirement gathering again. So it's the same thing that's happening here. So it's the process. My problem is the process because online safety is a different issue. Different countries are taking a different stance on that. That's okay. We can talk about that. No issues. But I don't think this is equal to that. So that is the concern. And actually, to answer your question, it doesn't even tackle the problem of cybersecurity, because there's a different cybersecurity bill. Now, we have given our consultations for that in August, and we were told that it was coming this year. Or actually, it was coming by the end of 2023. That never came. It was only the online safety bill. So it's very clear it was brought for a different purpose and a
Have
different
they
objective.
mistaken both are same?
Sorry?
Have they mistaken to both be in the same thing?
No. This is a completely different act.
Yeah.
Where you're giving, for example, when you have an incident, you are supposed to report it to not CERT. There's a new agency being formed under CERT. It's called the Cybersecurity Agency. So
Yeah.
there's a whole process that will come. Code reviews. So all of that becomes standard. CISOs become standard for organizations when they assign the organization as a critical national infrastructure. So telcos, banks, state sector, private sector, doesn't matter. If you are designated a CNI, you will have to enforce those security standards within the organization. So all of that is there. So to answer your question, this does nothing for that in cybersecurity point of view. And we have been asking for a long time for this. I have been asking personally for a long time. So this is not the answer we got. So online safety bill, somebody's fantasy or somebody's thing, sadly it's here.
Let's see how it goes.
Yeah,
We'll
let's
let
see.
it, let time show us the results. You know?
We'll see. I mean, at least now, because of the pressure, now again, that was because the pressure because companies like Meta brought the pressure. Then there were overseas governments that brought pressure. Because of the pressure, only the changes came. So if they continue the pressure, maybe it will get to a point where it's acceptable. But my point is, it was done from day one. The process is flawed. So now what we have is a salvage job. So we'll
Okay.
see how successful we can get.
Cool. Great. Thank you, Asela.
No problem.
One more question I want to ask. I just want to know, let's say someone who comes to cybersecurity. I think I've asked this you before as well. As a learning path for cybersecurity, what are your recommendations and what sort of a starting point you can recommend to anyone who wants to learn about cybersecurity?
This is a very good question. Cybersecurity, now if you take 10 years ago, there was not even a degree for cybersecurity. Now only there are
People
degrees
are
for
starting it now.
people are starting now. 2-3 batches are coming in, and now only we have an undergraduate pool of cybersecurity graduates. Those days we didn't. My advice is, this is a very pragmatic subject, not a theoretical subject. You can learn some theory, but end of the day, when you come to an organization, that theory is useless because it's on the job training or on the job learning that you have to do. The other side of it is you can teach yourself. So I have mentored 16, 17-year-old guys. That guy is doing very well now. And before even doing his A-levels, he had several cybersecurity certifications. So that's the other side of it. So you don't need a formal academic path to get there. So my answer depends on who's asking me. So if you are an undergraduate, I can always tell you, learn more than what is taught for you. Learn more beyond the theory aspect. If you are a graduate and you just entered a workspace and what can I do to learn more cybersecurity, find your niche. Because most of the time, I always say cybersecurity is like law. Now, law has different areas. Just because you're a lawyer, you can specialize. You can specialize in criminal law, land law, divorce, marriage law, like that. So cybersecurity is the same. You have to find your niche. Maybe you're good at networking. Then maybe you're good at being coding.
Even ethical hacking is a part of it, right?
Ethical hacking, you can do that. So then there's so many functions that fall under that umbrella. Maybe you're good at maybe you start as a BA, and then you can move into GRC side, governance, risk, and compliance. So there's so many. I mean, for me, if there's paths open for everybody, because you don't need to take a very linear path to come to cybersecurity. My opinion is, even an outsider today can come, make a path, and get into cyber. That's my opinion. It's a very controversial one. Some academic institutes don't like me saying that, but my point is the same.
Yeah.
Because this is a very fluid field. So
And it's not something you can limit to books, right? Practical experience is the key component there, right?
You can have a bit of theory. Now, for example, if you're going to be in a software engineering background and you want to do threat analyst, you want to become a threat analyst, then creating your own malware, writing the code for a malware, reverse engineering a malware, that will require SC knowledge. But if you're going to go to the networking side, then that knowledge might not be important for you. You may need to know networking related function, networking, packet analysis. That see, the example I always take is, the bad guy doesn't have certification. Correct?
Okay, correct.
You don't get. We have ethical hackers.
Yeah.
Does the hacker have a certification? So my point is, we are the ones, saying our scopes and all that, but the bad guy, he has a different way of, and it's the same thing. It's the same SC knowledge he's using to exploit us, we are using to stop him.
Yeah.
The same networking knowledge he's using to find a weakness in the network, we are trying to stop it. Knowledge is the same. How you use it is the difference.
Yeah.
So this is what I say. This is very, very wide area. Anyone can come in and anyone can learn. So I think if you have an open mind and you're open to learn and you're curious about this. But one thing I always say, if you're in this field, you have to continuous learning. That's a very important factor. You can't say, okay, I know this now and then just run. Unlike there are some areas you can do that. This you can't. You have to continuously learn, because, like I said, the threat is evolving. Today, the way they hack you, tomorrow they may take a different variation of that. So you have to continuously understand how that is going to be and how you stop those guys.
Yeah.
So that's just my
great. Thank you, Asela. So I've taken a very late night.
No, my pleasure.
Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and experience. That's why I want to make a very short but very insightful and impactful conversation. And I gained a lot of knowledge from you. Thank you so much for your sharing your knowledge. So to conclude, one last word from you to, relate cybersecurity and just to your last few thoughts about that, and then we'll finish it off. Yeah.
My thoughts are from a organization point of view.
Yes.
Until everyone is safe, no one is safe. If you remember that, if this conversation becomes very easy. This is like in a boat, no? So the boat, there's one hole. You can't say I'm in the other corner. That hole doesn't affect me. It will affect everyone. So if we have that view on cybersecurity, we are okay.
Great. Thank you so much, Asela, for your time and your knowledge sharing. It was really fruitful discussion. And I personally learned a lot from you. So we'll meet up again soon for another session.
Sure.
So
let me know.
Yeah. Okay, then thank you so much.
No problem. Try to see if you can salvage this. I'm thinking you can. Balu.
Should be able to, no?
Yes, let's see. All right. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Asela. Okay. Bye. Thanks. Bye.